Redditors who have hired a private investigator, what did you discover? My friend hired someone only to find out his wife was just eating out alone in parking lots without him. Lol. I was looking for a lost family member. I discovered he wasn't living anywhere under his name, he wasn't in jail, and that he hadn't collected his VA benefits. Turns out he was living homeless on the street, but the PI didn't find that part. I hired one to follow somebody suing me for a knee and hand injury. The PI put motion cameras outside where he lived. One morning he sent me a picture of guy wearing sunglasses asking me if that was him, which it was. PI followed him through several red lights at high speed to a park. He then records him smoking pot and playing frisbee golf without limping. The guy he followed walked up to the PI suspicious, but he talked his way out of it. PI fee was money well spent. About 6-7 years ago I made a solid attempt to try to find my father. Have never met him, but my son had just been born, and I decided it was time. After many failures I went to r/RBI to ask them, and was contacted by a PI out of the Northwest. He told me he would help me find the info I was looking for pro bono, on the one condition I don't give out his Reddit username. I said deal, and the next day I had an email with 5 potential names, addresses, phone numbers, etc. The second one down on the list was my father. I contacted him, it went terrible, and it really wasn't worth it. But I'll never forget that Redditor's kindness in helping me accomplish a 30-year goal. If you see this, thanks again buddy. Edit. You guys have all been so awesome and supportive. The real props goes to the Reddit PI, who volunteered his time to a random person who he has never met. You sure are a fine human specimen, and if you read this, I do want you to know I paid it forward after what you did. Edit 2. So many awards. Much appreciated. Thank you kind Redditors. But save your money and put it in Doge! That a scummy competitor who ripped off my branding, 90% word for word on business name, copy and graphics had several serious felony charges, including getting caught red-handed robbing someone at gunpoint by a passing police officer. I was one of the only witnesses in a rape and false imprisonment case. He pretended to be a cop and captured, handcuffed, and raped multiple women against a very wealthy man. During the course of the case, he hired a PI to follow me around and dig up dirt. However, at the time, I was working from home and left my house so infrequently and at such weird, non-regular hours that the guy basically gave up after 6 months and told his employer I was impossible to track or follow. I also lived in a massive high-rise with over 200 units, and the exit to the underground parking was behind a closed gate, out of sight from public view, so he could also never catch me coming or going. He also tried getting a hold of public records, but everything I had, besides my lease, was in another person's name. He tried to get up to my unit through security, also pretending to be a cop, and the building called me, and I told them not to let him up, and to call the cops if he ever showed up again. He tried leaving notes with my doorman for me. I ignored them. He tried contacting all my friends and family, and thankfully all of them basically told him to fuck off lol. Thought he was a cop or something. Anyways, that was funny, and definitely didn't dissuade me from testifying, and now the wealthy guy is in prison. Found out that they are very expensive. Not me, but my former boss. She hired a PI to investigate a guy from my country, who she was dating online. All the birthday cards, little gifts, and little etceteras she sent him never reached him, because as it turned out, he never gave her his real name. She finally had enough, and hired a PI. Guy was married, and he lived further away from where he said he was located. My coworker hired one to track down his first car he ever owned so he could buy it back. Cleanest T28 I've ever seen, in person that is. My brother hired a PI against me. And then, when the PI couldn't find anything, my brother wanted me to reimburse him for hiring the PI. Because I misled him into thinking I was hiding something when I said I wasn't hiding anything. Edit. To answer the questions. It was about money, yes. He is stupid, yes. He believes canon, yes. I still have some contact with him, because he is the victim of his own stupidity. No, he is not my favorite brother. My other two are amazing. His name is not Dwight Schrute, not me, but this is kind of a funny one. A friend of my father's hired one to find out whether he was still married or not. He had been separated for many years, but wasn't sure whether his ex had ever actually divorced him. Sounds strange to me too, but that's how I heard it. He needed to know, because he wanted to remarry. So what did he find out? That she had in fact divorced him, and was also dead. So no worries on that front. The US gov't hired one for my security clearance. They found nothing. I told them about a juvenile felony I had, and they said they didn't find any records on it. Gave me a bit of hope that the gov't can't actually see everything, lol. My cousin hired one against his dad, and found out he was actually secretly married to his secretary. This was in Pakistan, and my cousin ended up telling his dad's family, and they are collectively just stopped talking to him. They haven't spoken in 6 years now. The dad tried to force them to accept his new wife as their mother, but it didn't work out. What was crazy was that Pakistan legally has polygamy, and it was all above the books. I was completely shocked. My cousin told me he got suspicious when his dad started taking solo business trips to the US and Japan a lot. Turns out, he was appeasing his new wife by taking her on trips all the time. My cousin knew the secretary had access to his dad's bank account, but he always assumed it was because he had to pay taxes in Canada as a dual citizen, and needed someone to manage the finances. The stories he told me, it was nuts. PI are actually pretty expensive in Pakistan, especially if you want a good one, but it was totally worth it for my cousin. I worked under a PI as an intern for a while. Sometimes we would use a fake, wanted fugitive, poster to knock on people's doors, and ask if they've seen the person in the area. We would use this tactic just to see who would answer the door, how the house looked, if anyone else lived in the house, etc. The amount of people who volunteer such information to complete strangers is nuts. Yes, we had badges and identification, but most people would never ask to see it in the first place. Worked for a law firm that routinely hired PI to investigate workers' comp claimants. One particular juicy bust involved a guy claiming a major back injury. PI got a whole day's video of him doing a roofing job. Hauling big packs of shingles up a ladder, shit like that. They went to mediation Reddit to drop the video on this guy when he shows up in a wheelchair being pushed by his twin brother. The PI had been following the twin all day. Fastest check I've ever seen written by an insurance company. Ex-private investigator here. I worked a divorce case where we found out that the husband was a pedo and stalking nearby schools. I worked for a private investigator. The dumbest cases were when people filed fraudulent workers' comp cases, and then posted pictures all over their social media of themselves skydiving, and shit when they alleged that they couldn't even walk. It was unbelievable the videos and pictures people would post after filing these claims with companies who had shit tons of money. Here's the TLDR version. Grandma was sleeping with her daughter-in-law, but hired me to determine whether or not her son was sexually abusing her step-granddaughter. He wasn't though, they were just engaged in a consenting affair. So everybody is cheating on everybody in this redneck disaster. I still got paid though. I've never hired one, but I worked as a PI for a while. I have seen everything from people cheating on their spouses to stalkers to runaways. One of the most tangled messes I was hired for was a grandma, who hired me to determine whether her 21-year-old step-granddaughter was being sexually abused by her stepfather. Stepfather is grandma's biological son. That's the only task I was given. Turns out the stepfather was not forcing her, she was willingly sleeping him, and had been engaged in an affair with him for almost 2 years. To make things even more complicated, grandma was a lesbian, and sleeping with stepfather's, grandma's son, wife, and was trying to gain information to convince stepfather's wife to leave him for grandma. The true motive came out after I confronted grandma for not being forthcoming, because grandma paid a special visit literally minutes after step-granddaughter, and stepfather drove away from stepfather's house to wait for grandma's lover.